Hey everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the All Dolphins podcast. I am the host, Alain Poupart, editor, publisher, lead writer, do everything for the alldolphins.com, joined by a longtime Miami Dolphins columnist, Omar Kelly. Yes, you could call it Poupart and Omar. See, that rhymes. Welcome, Omar. How are you going?
Poupart, yeah. Well, we just call you Poop. So Poupino?
Poupino. There you go. Owen Poop. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of variations we can play. I kind of like the rhyming thing of Poupart.
Yeah, I think you had something. You said something in the last podcast we did that I liked. I can't remember what it was.
I can't. Okay, regardless. More important what we talk about than the title. Am I right?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Well, okay, let's try to again pretend that we know what we're talking about. As we dive into this week 1 of free agency, I have the list down. I'm going to look down, so apologies for all that for the Dolphins move so far that I have as of 10 a.m. on Sunday morning when we're recording this. New players signed: quarterback Mike White, wide receiver Braxton Berrios, tight end Eric Sobert, offensive lineman Dan Feeney, linebacker David Long Jr., linebacker Malik Reed, safety Deshaun Elliott, and punter Jake Bailey, not including Jalen Ramsey, of course, because that's a trade, technically. They've re-signed.
We can include him in free agency. It's the biggest move they've made so far.
I agree, but it's an offseason move. Is it really free agency? Okay, we'll include it for our purposes. Players re-signed: Myles Gaskin, Savon Ahmed, Raheem Mostert.
Every running back.
Yeah,
all the running backs.
Okay, now we'll save time there. River Craycraft, John Lovett, Kendall Lamb, Jerron Christian, Duke Riley, and Nick Needham. And then the 3 free agents who have signed with other teams so far: Mike Gesicki, Landon Robert, Thomas Morstead. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey is the headliner. Is there any other one of those moves that stand out to you, Omar, in a good way and in a bad way?
Well, I would have to start with David Long Jr. I think he was the most important position that they needed to add. This is a kid who's got instincts clearly, has had an okay career so far. They didn't pay him major money, so it's a respectable deal. But are you absolutely certain he's an upgrade over Landon Roberts? And are you absolutely certain this is a player that's going to be available to you for 14 of the 17 games you play this season? Now, you could say the exact same thing about anybody that they added. Jalen Ramsey, do you know if he's an upgrade? Well, yes, he's clearly an upgrade. No matter what, he's clearly an upgrade over what they've added, but we don't know from the health standpoint. But David Long doesn't have a proven, this is like signing Teron Armstead. You knew there was an injury risk, and oh, surprise, surprise, injuries played a factor all season last year. Now, David Long Jr., same thing. Now, what I do like about this is that it's a deal that rewards him for what he's done in his first 4 seasons, but it doesn't satisfy him in terms of I've made it. This is going to be his 2-year opportunity to prove himself, and there's a possibility that he can hit pay dirt, and I like that. Yeah,
it's what they call in hockey terms a bridge contract. Between the first one and the big one. The thing with David Long is, to me, he's a massive upgrade over Landon Roberts in that he can cover. And you look at his metrics, coverage, they're outstanding. The thing with him is he missed 12 games combined the last 2 years because of hamstring issues. And for those who haven't seen it, go Google the clip of Mike Vrabel talking about David Long and his injury issues. And it's like, damn, talk about a coach calling out a player for not taking care of his body the right way. If you haven't seen it, it's like, yeah. And you understand why the Dolphins got him at such a cheap price. I believe it's 2 years, $11 million. And the issue is, again, will he stay healthy? And if he stays healthy, that's a fabulous signing from my seat. But then
because he clearly upgrades over Orlando Roberts. Now, do you think he's going to give you 300 tackle seasons like Orlando Roberts just did?
No, but he's not going to be asked to do the same thing. He's a different type of player. And in the Fangio scheme, the linebackers need to cover, and we all know Landon's not a great coverage linebacker.
That's correct.
My only point is, if David Long winds up on IR next year with hamstring issues and can't have fans bitching of what bad luck we're having and all that, Well, it comes with a risk. And you mentioned Teron Armstead. Now, Jalen Ramsey hasn't missed games. His health has been fine. But he's also at an age, and he's also at an age where most cornerbacks, generally speaking, their play starts to take a dip a little bit. Of course, don't mention that to him, because he took the great offense when the question was brought up, prefaced by saying, like some people are, what do you say to people who might suggest that you're past your prime, man? And he was like, okay, did you watch the tape last year? And by all accounts, he played very, very well last year. So, and no question, he's a massive upgrade. Anything else stand out other than the David Long signing?
Mike White, I've always liked Mike White. I think that he is a polished, established number 2 quarterback. As we've said in the previous podcast that we did, I would have gone young in the draft. Now, you can't do everything with that second round pick. However, I like a talented young quarterback that can be a breaking case of emergency. And if something happens to Tua and he misses half a season, we invest in this young quarterback and we see what the upside is. Now, could Mike White turn into a Kirk Cousins? Absolutely. I've said that from when he was in the draft process. He's shown you that there's some moxie to him, that there's some upside to him during his career with the Jets. But how high is that upside? Do I think that he can be a top 16 quarterback in the NFL? No. And I do believe that if you would have invested, let's say, a second round pick in a quarterback like Hawker and had him and had him in the fold and seen what that upside was, if you needed to break that, breaking case of emergency, you could have had a backup plan for Tua. Let's say things go left. Right now, the question I have is Mike White a backup plan for Tua? I know he's a backup, but is he a backup plan? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and
dangerous place for Tuanon. You don't even want to touch it, Boop.
No, I wasn't crazy about the signing, and look, Mike White's a guy who had like his first start in 2021. He blew it up against Cincinnati, led him to an upset win. I mean, like 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, something like that. And then his play went last year. First started, it's against Chicago, mind you. 31-10, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then after that, and I understand he got nailed in the ribs a couple of times, and the offensive line of the Jets was a complete joke. And that didn't help him. But I also watched a couple of games where I was really wanting to be impressed by him, but it was like, I mean, okay. But again, he could be one of those where if everything around him is great, then he can perform adequately. How comfortable are we going to be if something happens to Tua and the Dolphins head into a playoff game with Mike White? That to me, it's an upgrade over Skylar Thompson last year in Buffalo, but how big of an upgrade is it?
No, it's not a substantial upgrade. Now the question is and I get it with Teddy Bridgewater. Is it close to Teddy Bridgewater? No, it's not. Now Teddy couldn't stay healthy, and really hasn't shown you much. But Teddy has a established, accomplished resume in the NFL. I think he's going to continue to be a solid, decent backup somewhere. Mike White has still got to prove that he's a solid, decent backup, and I'm okay with it. The contract is very team friendly. I think it really doesn't hamstring you from doing anything. Year one cap number is 6.7, which for a quarterback, that's pretty damn good. Now, is it ideal? No. Rookie quarterback drafted in the second round would have been way better, but hey, it hasn't stopped them from doing anything that they want to do. And to be honest with you, I'm not necessarily sure that they've got any more big moves left in them. So it's all good.
I do want to say a couple of things about Teddy before we move on to a different topic, because I see online, like somebody made a comment as part of a story, like he didn't play particularly well last year. Well, here's the thing. From the start, I advocated the Dolphins needed to find a new backup quarterback, and it wasn't because of performance. It was because you couldn't rely on him because he's fragile, and he had the injury issues last year, which you can't have behind Tua. But the dude literally appeared in 4 games, twice coming in for somebody else, for Tua against Cincinnati, for Skylar Thompson against Minnesota, and then his 2 starts he didn't finish. I mean, can we cut the guy some slack? And even with that, he should have won the Minnesota game if not for the Jalen Waddle fumble. And then against Cincinnati, they were on the verge of taking the lead until there was the mix-up with Mike Gesicki. And then the game against New England at the end, yeah, he had the horrible pick six. It gave New England a 3-point lead at the time. Early in the third quarter, we were automatically assuming that the Dolphins couldn't have won that game had he stayed in the game and not foolishly trying to get in the way of a tackle and broken his finger. So this notion that Teddy Bridgewater was a disaster and the offense completely was calamitous because Tua wasn't in the lineup, to me is complete garbage. But having said that, you couldn't re-sign him because you couldn't depend on it. So that's my piece on Teddy Bridgewater. Okay. So you wrote a column for alldolphins.com yesterday about Mike Gesicki, which stopped short of you breaking out champagne, toasting his departure. I happen to have a lot more favorable view of Mike Gesicki.
Oh my God.
But here's the thing. And you made this point here. Let's be honest. Mike Gesicki was never really a tight end. Mike Gesicki is an overgrown.
He's a big, slow slot receiver
who can make contested catches and will do the circus one-handed catch every once in a while.
I'd rather just have a good slot receiver.
That's fair. But the Dolphins also used Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in the slot a little bit. The Dolphins do their best work in the middle of the field.
Yes.
And it became congested. They have too many guys there. Now they've also added Braxton Berrios to help fill that role.
Yes.
I didn't have nearly the issue.
When you look at the contract that the Patriots signed him to, it was very clear that either Mike Gesicki didn't want to be here, which I think is a strong possibility, or they didn't want him to be here, which is a strong possibility. Let me continue to help people digest this Mike Gesicki thing and what my beef is. I hated the pick from the minute Chris Greer made it. I discovered Mike Gesicki not from his sensational combine performance, but from evaluating and watching Saquon Barkley's film back in that draft in 2018. I'm watching the film, and then there's this disaster of a blocker, horrendous.
He didn't pave the way for Barkley's rushing yards and
for the worst blocker on the field for the best running back in the NFL. I mean, in college football, and it was Gesicki. I was like, this guy is a turnstile. He can't do anything in the blocking game. And then lo and behold, I find out this kid is some sensational athlete, volleyball player, developmental project tight end. And I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my God, he's going to be a tragedy for whoever drafts him. Because not that he's not a talented player, not that he's not a solid slot receiver when you factor in all the things. But when you look at Mike Gesicki, anytime you put him on the field, like 85% of the time you put him on the field, you're telegraphing exactly what you're doing. That does not help an offensive coordinator. What it helps is the defensive coordinator and the middle linebacker and the safeties. It handcuffs your offense. And for 4 years really, because he didn't play his first year, I have made the argument that the Dolphins have handcuffed their offense by having Mike Gesicki on the field. It has been an argument that people have fought me tooth and nail. I was irate that they franchise tagged him last year because in my mind, my thought process, I'd rather the third round compensatory pick than giving Mike Gesicki $11 million. And I could use those $11 million for so many other things. Maybe get a real tight end. Then you see, we're going to work on him. We're going to teach him how to block. Well, that got abandoned pretty quickly. And then it became, he's a 350 snap player on our offense for $11 million. It was just mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. Then don't add on top of that the fact that you have to select Durham Smythe in the 4th round because you selected Mike Gesicki in the 2nd round and you knew he couldn't block, and you absolutely, without a doubt, needed a blocker. So instead of going to get Dallas Goedert or Mark Andrews or the Dallas tight end, Dalton Schultz, which you could have got into, all of them selected after Mike. All of them selected way after Mike. No, you go get the one-trick pony that telegraphs your offense. It never made any sense to me. And I hated the fact that they just kept, and this is one of the things, this is what's going to get Chris Greer fired, in my opinion. He doubles and triple downs on his mistakes. You're going to go into 2024 knowing that Austin Jackson is a mistake, but we're triple downing on it and saying
24 is next year.
Yeah. We're doubling down on it and saying he's going to be our starting right tackle. We're tripling down on it.
Yeah, hold on. I have to jump in here. Okay, a couple of, and after this very, very wishy-washy take that you just said on Mike Gesicki.
Oh, defend him, please. Please make the argument. Defend him.
I was joking, by the way. Obviously, you're very strong in your feelings about Mike. I'm of the opinion that one of the moves that they will make in free agency is they're going to get a veteran right tackle with starting experience who's going to come in and he's going to serve as an insurance policy in training camp if Austin Jackson shows you that maybe that's not the way to go. And whether it's Brandon Shell or George Fant, who's been out there as mentioned as a possibility, somebody like that. It's not going to be
Eric Fisher. Yeah, I'm good with Eric Fisher.
Eric Fisher would be fine depending on his health status, because obviously he had the Achilles a couple of years ago and then came with the Dolphins and it was a calf, I believe it was. Okay, here's the thing with Gesicki. When they drafted him, the name that Chris Greer dropped, because I went back and looked at the transcript after the selection to see exactly what he had said, and he acknowledged that the guy wasn't a great blocker. He kind of like threw out the name Jimmy Graham as, you know, former basketball player like that. The only problem is that in terms of athletic, Mike Gesicki's a good athlete. Jimmy Graham is a special athlete. There's a difference there.
And has a toughness to him. Because I covered Jimmy Graham when he was a basketball player at the University of Miami, and he played like Charles Oakley. He just was, Frank Haith couldn't start him because he was so damn physical, he fell out of the game. But continue. Okay.
Well, to me, the better analogy of what Gesicki became or was is Darren Waller, who also doesn't block very much, but Darren Waller, again, is at a higher level as a receiver than Mike Gesicki is. And the other important point to make is the franchise tag, and I mentioned this before, was applied like early March or whatever, and Gesicki immediately signed it because basically once you franchise tag, you have no other option. But then everything changed for Gesicki, for Cedric Wilson as well, who the Dolphins had signed in free agency, when the possibility of getting Tyreek Hill popped up. Because once they got Tyreek Hill, that changed the entire vision of the offense.
Let's go. Okay, let me ask you this question. If Tyreek Hill was never added to the Dolphins, do you think Mike Gesicki would have had a successful season under this offense?
Hell of a lot. First of all, the offense would have been different. I mean, once they added Tyreek Hill to team with Jalen Waddle on the outside, all of a sudden it's like Mike McDaniel went, oh, forget what I was going to do. Forget the heavy emphasis on the outside zone and all that, and the throws on the middle of the field. We're going deep. These guys are going to create space deep down the field, 20 yards. It doesn't have to be a bomb over the top every time. 20 yards on the field. The defensive back's going to be scared so crapless of those two guys. They're going to back off, create the room, and then we're just going to throw it on the field. And Mike Gesicki then becomes somebody who's going to clog up space in the middle of the field. We don't need him that much. And then with Cedric Wilson, it was like the problem with Cedric Wilson, he got outplayed by Trent Sherfield from the start of training camp. But Tyreek Hill,
he's not good. He's not good.
He had one decent season in Dallas when they had a whole bunch of wide receivers.
We watched him in training camp. He wasn't good.
And that's a bad contract they gave him because they guaranteed him too much money, including $5 million this year. And I've had people ask me, like in the mailbag, why is Cedric Wilson still on the roster? Well, because he's guaranteed $5 million this year.
According to my buddies that cover the Cowboys, they take him back. I'm like, I'd give you a 7th round pick to take him back.
At that price. It's going to be
give you something.
Cedric Wilson and a 4 for like a 2029 7th round pick. That's a trade. That's a trade that
4 is a little high. I'd go 5. And I might throw in some money.
Do you remember the Brock Osweiler trade? What was it, to Cleveland?
Oh, my God.
To Houston or Houston to Cleveland. It would be obviously not that ridiculous, but the same kind of deal.
You know what? Let me be fair to Cedric Wilson Jr.
Go ahead.
They need size. He's got size. Maybe if we alter his role where we're not saying to him, hey, you go be the slot receiver. Maybe you go be a boundary guy. maybe he's not a return specialist. So thank you, Braxton Berrios is here. Is he the number 4? Sure, maybe. So, but I'm $7 million for the number 4 receiver. Like, come on, bro. That was such a bad deal. I mean, and I get it. I wasn't a fan of it when it was done anyway. I wasn't a fan of a lot of their deals last year, from Chase Edmonds to, you know, the first wave of free agency, not the Tyreek Hill, Teron Armstead. I thought the first wave of free agency was, it was it.
I know, I agree. And I wasn't a fan of the move either. And there was like, I talked to people in Dallas. It was like, he's a nice receiver, but to me, 3 years, 21 mil.
Yeah.
Little rich for my
what last year's deal, because people don't realize this, but Chris Grier morphs into whoever he's the GM for. So it goes to the coaching staff. I put a lot of those signings on, this is what this coaching staff wanted.
Right.
And that makes me worry about the evaluation process for this coaching staff, because like, could we be going through a second wave of this? Like, you looked at Mike Gesicki and you said, we can make him work. And you looked at Durham Smythe for $7 million, 2 years, $7 million, and you said, he's good. He could be good. I would have went out and got something else. And I get it. You know what's there and you know what the potential is, or actually they don't, but Chris Grier does. Like, Durham Smythe is going to be an NFL player. Is he an NFL starter? He is not. I don't think if you release him, I don't think anybody is, because you could release him for 3.2 and get $3.2 million in cap space. And I'm not saying this is a move that they should do, but I don't think anybody's like, oh damn, Durham Smythe just got released. Let's go get him. Let's hurry up and scurry and go get him. And that's not a knock on Durham Smythe. He's a limited player, and same thing with Mike Gesicki, limited player. Same thing with Elandon Roberts, limited player. Like, at what, and I get it, there's a certain price point you're going to pay for limited players, but at what point are we going to stop adding limited players?
Well, but I understand that ideally Durham Smythe's your number 2 tight end. Ideally, yes. In an ideal world. Okay, he's getting $3 million. Is that really that monstrous a contract? And Durham Smythe, as I mentioned, he'll never be a star, but chances are he'll be in the NFL for health permitting. He'll be in the NFL
5 more years,
12 years maybe.
Yeah, 5 more years, yeah. No question.
So I have no issue with him being on the team. Now they signed the guy from Denver, who I'm told is he's okay. I mean, he'll make a play here or there.
Eric Saubert.
Yeah, correct. But it's another one.
Yeah.
He might be below Durham Smythe in the pecking order, but I balance things out. And if you look at like the most of the top offenses last year, a lot of them had really, really good tight ends. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and all that.
Yeah, but I would disagree. I would disagree with you where you're going from this standpoint.
Don't know where I'm going because I had.
Okay, make your point. Go ahead.
Counterpoint. But having said that, no team in the NFL has the speed outside with Hill and Waddle, where it almost demands, because I this is different topic, but I'm like, why don't the Dolphins focus more on the running game? Because your 2 studs on offense are Hill and Waddle, and that's what makes your offense special. I know you're going to disagree with that. What makes your offense special is Hill and Waddle and the problems they create with their speed, and that needs to be the focus of the offense.
Okay, that's cute. It can be. It can be.
Shoot, I love that then.
Yeah, that's cute. It's cute. There's a certain point in the game where, let's say you got a 6-point lead and 8 minutes left. What you gonna do? You're gonna have to run that ball. And I don't have a problem. We're pivoting to. I'm glad you continued to state your argument. I apologize for nearly cutting you off.
But at least you called it cute. Go ahead.
The offense is cute. The offense is cute. I wasn't calling your point cute. I call the offense cute because it's predicated on big plays, which is great and sexy and sells tickets and makes Tua look great. You know what would also make Tua look great? an effective, forceful rushing attack. And that was the one thing I expected from Mike McDaniel's first year. Now, obviously, you get a little creative and you get cute when you get Tyreek Hill. No arguments there. But show me what you got. Show me what you got hired for, because you got hired because you're going to build a forceful, sustainable rushing attack. That's what you got hired for.
No, it ain't. No, it ain't.
Yeah, it is.
You got hired to get the most out of Tua. That's why you got hired.
He's never been a quarterback. He's never been a quarterback guru.
It doesn't, but he's an offensive genius.
Proven by the run game. Proven by the run game. He's never coached a passing game in the NFL.
He was the offensive coordinator in 2021, to be specific.
Okay.
We can argue that maybe it was Shanahan's offense, but he was the OC in 2021. And I think
called run plays.
I agree. I think more than anything, it was like they were looking for a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Once the other dust that we shall not.
So now you're putting QB whisperer on Mike McDaniel's name?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay, name another quarterback he's developed. Can't.
He was never asked.
Oh, okay. So, all right, cool. Fair.
He was never asked. And this was, you don't think that was job one of any head coach the Dolphins hired last year once all the other possibilities, the big possibilities disappeared?
I think job one was build an efficient, effective offense, which they did. And props to him. I'm not in the opinion that Tua was this quarterback who needed to be fixed. Like Tua was like the 16th, 17th best quarterback last year, and he needed to take his game to another level. Well, Mike McDaniel on the offense helped him take his game to another level. And props to Mike McDaniel. If you want to give him the quarterback whisperer label, okay, I'll let it go. I'll let it go. But usually you hire a guy with the label of quarterback whisperer, and this isn't the first quarterback he's whispered sweet nothings into the air and helped him blossom. Like, this guy's the first. So you're playing with semantics here, because obviously for anything, it's all encompassing. You want the head coach who's going to take your team to the playoffs on a consistent basis, blah, blah, blah. Obviously. Okay. I'm not buying the idea of the Dolphins targeted Mike McDaniel specifically so they could have a great, effective running game. Above, if we're going to pick one priority above and everything else, was get the most out of Tua. To get the most out of Tua, you needed an effective running game. But we are playing semantics here. We are. Okay. Let me go ahead. Okay, let me make this point about the running game, because I know what your stance is. I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Okay. Tell people where my stance is. Well, you want Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook? Absolutely, no question about it. And I'm not in a rush. No. People need to understand I'm not in a rush, because they're probably going to be traded maybe during the draft. Maybe they get kept on the roster and maybe traded at midseason. I'm not in a rush, so I can be patient. Now, if Buffalo's going to get Derrick Henry, okay, I might rush. But go ahead. Okay. Here's the thing. Let me play devil's advocate. And mind you, if the Dolphins can get Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook at a reasonable price without affecting their salary cap in the future and all that, and the compensation isn't too much, bring them on. Obviously. It's always a question of... Oh, no, the re-signing of 4 running backs isn't going to stop you, Poupart? Counterpoint. Okay, because I know you hate the re-signing of the same 4 running backs, which on the surface I can see, because there's nothing sexy about it, except Raheem Mostert had some good games. And here's the numbers I would throw out to you. Raheem Mostert, 4.7 yards per carry. Sorry, Jeff Wilson, 4.7. Raheem Mostert, 4.9. Savon Ahmed was 5.3. Okay. That's pretty damn good. All right. I mean, that's pretty damn good. You need to throw on Mike Gesicki. I mean, you need to throw on Myles Gaskin. Well, he's a number 4 back. And why? Why? Because you need bodies in training camp, and because Myles couldn't get a better offer somewhere else. Let's call it what it is. And I like Myles. He's a nice kid and all that. No, I like him too, and I don't have a problem with him. I just don't think at the height, he's the number 4 back on this team.
Correct, but you need to bring, maybe he doesn't make the 53. So, I mean, big whoop. I mean, when we're talking about re-signing the running backs, I don't think a whole lot of folks are like, well, then they got Myles Gaskin back. I mean, no offense. So it's the other 3 guys who, again, that all had very good rushing averages. Where the issue is the Dolphins. I mean, I looked that up. They were like 0 for 6 on 3rd and 2 rushes last year. I mean, Jesus Christ. How bad is this? But I also don't recall.
Derrick Henry fixes that.
But I also don't recall any plays where, as I had the years before, where I'm looking at the replay and thinking, man, the running back left some yards on that play.
Okay, that's fair.
So if they're the offensive line, which, by the way, and we're going to attack this at some other point, which I don't think is nearly the disaster that a lot of people think it is.
I agree.
But the offensive line also isn't perfect, and one of the issues was short yardage run blocking. And so again, Derrick Henry would help, but I'm not like discombobulated because they brought back the same 3 running backs, which, by the way, I had predicted. I mean, pat on the back, but I don't think it was necessarily that difficult of a call to make, because all 3 of them that are brought back, the top 3, have a connection to Mike McDaniel, and they all performed pretty well last year.
The one thing that I don't like about this Mike McDaniel era, and it's not a knock on McDaniel because everybody in the NFL does it, familiarity. They just so, I know him. I know what he brings. That's what I want to do instead of starting fresh. And I respect some of these decisions. You know, Dan Feeney, I respect it. You needed a backup center. That's a competent backup center. At one point in time, this guy was considered a stud in the NFL. He's not, but hey, but not stud in the NFL, but stud prospect. I like that signing. It's better than Michael Dieter. So I like the signing of Eric Saubert. Could he give you more? Obviously the defensive coordinator probably has some familiarity with him. So maybe he told you something that excited you. Maybe he said this kid's a monster on special teams. We don't know yet. But what I don't like is just this need for, you could have added any back in the process to add something else to this equation. And you go with all 4 that like, okay, cool. I mean, hey, it's what people in the NFL do. They're familiar with it. But and on to even play devil's advocate to my position, Chase Edmonds, they didn't know him, didn't fit. Look how well that turned out.
You're right.
So, we'll see how it plays out. Do I think that there's more juice in this run game? There's absolutely more juice in this run game. There's got to be. Is it on the backs or is it on the offensive line? I don't know. I think injuries have played a huge factor in that offensive line. I think people have overstated, and this is coming from a guy who's obsessed with offensive line play.
Yes, you are.
Which is me. I looked at them and I said, you know what? They're a healthy Teron Armstead away from being a top 16 unit in the NFL. And do I know that Teron Armstead's going to be healthy all season? No. Can I put my money on it? No. The question is, the wild card, or I've always said that an offensive line is only as good as its weakest link. Right now, to me, I know people will say it's Liam, but I would say it's Austin Jackson. I've seen Liam.
You don't know what he is as a right tackle. He got hurt the first game, and he got hurt the first game he came back.
Come on, we saw him in training camp. We saw him in training camp.
We did.
He wasn't.
Dude,
yeah,
I don't buy training camp unless.
Okay, for offensive linemen, I'll accept that. I'll accept that. I've never been wild by Austin Jackson. Never. Not in the draft process. Not in his first season. Not in his second season. Not in his third season. You're not going to pick up his 5th-year option because you're not an idiot. So you already know you got to miss. What are you doing to address the fact that you got to miss? Or are you going to double down and continue to invest in it?
No, like I said, they're gonna go out and they're gonna sign a veteran tackle.
Yeah, and they should be in no rush. They should be in no rush. You could
No,
go sign. You could go sign 3 veteran tackles for $2 million a piece with 250 guaranteed contract and have them there. Obviously Brandon Shell, and I would have resigned Brandon Shell. Now, if somebody like Buffalo wants to give him big money, okay, go for it. And I don't believe that, but just add 3 veteran players. 3 veteran players who play right tackle. Right tackle, I swear to God, it shouldn't be this hard. It really, and I know it's to his blind side, but it really shouldn't be this hard.
No, and I made the point of somebody who was like, and we're gonna have to wrap this up pretty quickly, but somebody made the point of, well, you got to get a really, really good right tackle to protect Tua's blind side. And to that I counter, when's the last time Tua took a big shot from the blind side since AJ Epinesa in week 2 of 2021? There wasn't one last year. He got hurt on plays that took forever to develop, and he kept hanging on to the ball. So, and I'm not diminishing the importance of it. I get it. And one final thing before we wrap this up, because you mentioned what's missing from the running game to really take the next step, and you mentioned maybe some of it's running back, some of it's the offensive line. How about some of it's a play calling and sticking with the running game a little bit more than they did last season? Because there were times when it was going and they were very quick. And can we stop throwing every single time on 3rd and 1? I mean, Jesus Christ, seriously.
Hold on. Let me play devil's advocate here.
Yeah, you got about a minute to make your point.
Yeah, I'm just gonna make it quickly. If people are crowding the box and I'm throwing on 3rd and 1, I like my chances of breaking that tackle and getting that big play. So he's lulled into his weapons. He's lulled into an obsession with his weapons.
Obsession with the weapons, correct. But I did the research one time. I actually documented every single solitary 3rd and 1 because that's kind of the sick individual that I am.
Sick individual.
And I thank you very little. And I do not recall like a really long play, and their percentage was among the lowest in the NFL on converting 3rd and 1. So sometimes
so you're saying it's a maturity issue for Mike McDaniel. Gotcha.
I'm not sure if that's the word. I think an over fascination with the toys he has on the outside. I think a better way.
To get over it, you got to mature as a play caller.
That's fair. Okay, so on that note, we'll wrap this up. Omar, as always, a pleasure.
Oof, I got to start wearing some. I'm gonna wear a hat that says my allegiance to something.
There you go.
I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Surprise me.
All right.